morning and welcome to the April edition of the Ombudsman Corner. I'd like to take just a couple seconds before we start today's presentation to say thank you to all of our volunteers for all the hard work that you've done this year. I know that the residents really appreciate all the effort that you've put into helping them resolve their issues. I know that I appreciate all the hard work that you've done this year, and I'll just leave it at that, just with a simple thank you. Today we have Sharon Rich. She's a senior advisor with the Advocates and Guardians for the Elderly and Disabled, Inc., more commonly known as AGIT. And what we're going to do today is talk about a program called the Pooled Special Needs Trust. Good morning, Sharon.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm great, thank you.
Can you explain to us what is the Pooled Special Needs Trust?
A pooled trust is a legal instrument to allow individuals to place income and assets into the trust to qualify for Medicaid. So any monies you put into the trust do not count for Medicaid purposes.
Yeah. And how does that differ from the QIT trust?
A qualified income trust you can only put income into. In the pooled trust, you could put income and or assets. And also, there's another big difference. In the QIT, you can only pay generally medical expenses out of the trust, so it works great in a nursing home situation. However, out of the pooled trust, you can pay anything that's for the sole benefit of the individual, as long as the government benefits don't cover it. So we pay a lot. We have a lot of individuals in assisted living facilities that we do pooled trust for, that we pay their assisted living bill. If they still have a car, we can pay auto insurance, those types of things.
Okay. So from what I understand about Medicaid in an assisted living facility, Medicaid only pays the medical component of it, the medical needs. All the board and like the rent and things like that, that's paid for by the individual. Is that what the pooled trust could pay for?
Yes, but it depends on what type of Medicaid they're on when they're in the assisted living facility. Okay. So if they're on the Home and Community-Based Services Program, which is the long-term care program, right, the assisted living will be paid by Medicaid somewhere between $1,000 and $1,300 generally towards their monthly rent bill there, and the individual has to pick up the difference. It also would cover their medical expenses from Medicaid. You know, Medicare is always primary, right, and then Medicaid would pick up the difference. However, there are a lot of individuals who are on the waiting list to obtain the home and community-based services, right?
Correct.
So there is a program called QMB, Qualified Medicare Beneficiary, that helps those individuals reduce medication costs and co-pays for doctors and hospitals.
And how would someone qualify for that QMB?
Well, QMB has financial limits for both monthly income and assets, just like the long-term care programs do. For the QMB limit, though, it's different. The income is $1,012 a month in gross income, and the asset limit is $7,560. It just went up a little bit. So the way that an individual qualifies, if they're over those limits, let's say somebody makes $3,000 a month, they could put anything over and above the $1,000 limit into the trust, their income on a monthly basis, and if they're not over the asset limit, then that would qualify them for the Medicaid, after they do the application and get approved.
Okay. And how would someone who's in a nursing home qualify under that?
So in the nursing home, you've got, your long-term care program, which most people are applying for. The limit for that is $2,250 a month for income. And the asset limit on that is $2,000 in countable assets. So the limits are different. If they're, so usually someone going into the nursing home is applying for the long-term care Medicaid program, which there's typically not a waiting list for. And of course, that program, once they get qualified, helps to pay for the facility cost as well as for the medications and, the co-pays and the medical expenses.
Now, I understand there's about 10 companies in Florida that you can go through to do the pooled special needs trust. Can you give us a general breakdown of the process of what somebody would go through to get into the trust?
Sure. So a pooled trust is an economical vehicle in the sense that there is a master trust that's already created. So in the AGED, we have the AGED Pooled Special Needs Trust. In order to create an individual account, an individual would sign a joiner agreement, which is a fill-in-the-blank document. Name, address, social security number. There's an advocate that gets named in the joiner agreement, so if the individual can't advocate for themselves, they can name someone else. And also then there's termination provisions that get completed within the joiner agreement. So there's a joiner agreement, a fee agreement, and of course your general IDs, when you're opening up any type of an account. So generally if someone has resources that they're needing to put into the pooled trust, they're going to be working with an attorney because it is an irrevocable agreement. Once you put the money in, you can't just get your money back. Say, oops, I made a mistake, I want my money back. So it's important for individuals to understand what they're doing. Someone with a durable power of attorney with the proper language in it can also create a joiner agreement for a disabled individual in a nursing home, someone with legal capacity, or a professional guardian, or a private guardian, anybody with guardianship powers over that individual for the property can create a pooled trust. So it's pretty much, filling out the application and then submitting it to AGED, and we're happy to answer any questions individuals have about that process. And then we open up an account, and all of our clients have individual accounts, and they are provided with quarterly statements. And we also provide online access so they can view, what's in the account at any time.
And you said with this pooled special needs trust, you can pay other types of bills besides just like the nursing home bill, the assisted living bill, and the medical.
Right.
You pay like car insurance and things like that out of that trust. How, if somebody did go into the special needs trust, would they have to provide all the documentation of what monthly bills that they have so that you could pay those, or would they submit the bill every month, or how would that process work?
Okay, that's a good question. So we like our submissions in writing, so we have a special disbursement request form that we ask the individual or their advocate, usually it's their advocate, will submit the form to us along with a copy of the invoice that they want paid. And then we review it. If it's something that is the same amount every month, we just set up a repetitive payment so they don't have to submit that every month. Right. And we pay for a lot of things, like, it's the way I look at the pool trust is it's a nice vehicle to use to help improve someone's quality of life. Because, when you only have $2,000 to your name, if you need, additional things that maybe the government benefits don't pay for, there's no money to pay for those things. Some of the medical supplies that Medicaid provides, like diapers, are not always the best. So we pay for upgraded diapers, upgraded medical supplies. Sometimes electric wheelchair is needed instead of a normal, manual wheelchair. An extra bath, extra caregiving, legal services, guardianship payments. So lots of things can be paid for out of the trust.
Well, before we came on here, we were talking about that, and I want to make sure, was it the special needs trust that could help pay for medications once a person left the nursing home?
Right. So when someone's in rehab, very often they're being released, and there's a long list of medications that they need to take. And sometimes those individuals can't afford those medications. So they end up not taking them, or they cut their pills in half, or they're choosing between food and meds. So what happens is they're not going to get better, and they're going to be back at the hospital or the doctor's office. Check, which very often can cover the trustee fee.
Mm-hmm.
So in the QMB cases, let's say you've got an individual in rehab, and they're going back to the assisted living facility, and they're not on Medicaid. Maybe they're on the waiting list, and they can't afford their meds and to pay the assisted living facility. So if we could help them reduce those costs for the medications, then that would free up their money to pay for the assisted living facility. If you've got people, if you know what the donut hole is or the Medicare gap, insulin can cost $360 when you're in the gap. COPD meds, a lot of the antipsychotic medications are very expensive. So this QMB program is Medicare with Medicaid, and it's a lifesaver to reduce medication costs and co-pays for individuals.
So how does this all work together? How does the QMB program, the Special Needs Trust, the Medicaid, how does that all integrate together?
Well, you kind of have to figure out what kind of benefits does the individual really need. Do they need long-term care, or do they need help with medications and co-pays? So it's really a conversation about what are their needs. And then, we work with individuals to, kind of explain to them, well, you would need to, transfer X amount of dollars into the trust every month because you're over the income limit by a certain amount. And if they've got assets, we'll work with them on getting consulting with an attorney, to find out, what all their options are. So basically it's a conversation, to start with what are their needs, what is their income limit, what are their asset limits, and then we kind of go from there.
And part of the whole issue on pooled special needs is qualifying for Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
What are the current qualifications now, income-wise, to qualify for Medicaid?
Okay, so for the long-term care Medicaid, the nursing home long-term care, or the home and community-based services, the income limit is $2,250 for an individual. That's in gross income. And the countable asset limit is $2,000.
Okay. And what generally would be counted as an asset?
Okay, so I have to be careful because I'm not an attorney.
Okay.
But generally, anything an individual can get their hands on as far as money goes. So checking accounts, savings accounts, and savings, investments, those kinds of things. The state of Florida excludes a house as long as, a homestead house, as long as it's under a certain dollar amount in equity value. It's somewhere a little bit over $500,000, and they exclude one car generally. Just about everything else counts. Sometimes cash value in life insurance can count, and so that kind of hangs people up sometimes. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to look, IRAs and 401k type monies. Can sometimes be income, sometimes be assets. So you really need to be working with with an attorney so they can advise on what counts. But generally, anything you can get your hands on as far as money goes.
So pretty much any kind of liquid asset.
Yeah.
Would count against the bill.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know that you do help people apply for Medicaid. What are some of the common holdups in that process do you see?
Well, sometimes people don't want to give up control, when we're talking to them about using the pool trust because they're giving us their money, and now, they need that money to live on, so we're paying some of their bills for them. So control is sometimes a bit of an issue, but we have many clients, and we really try to handhold them in that process so they get a comfort level with us, paying some things for them. Sometimes married couples, the income limit and the asset limits are different for married couples. So if you've got only one individual that needs the trust, and they're married and living together, then you have to consider we can only pay things for the person that we have the trust for, sole benefit.
Right.
So let's say there's a husband and wife living in an assisted living facility. We can only pay, let's say we have the account for the wife. We can only pay wife's part of the bill. Or someone living in the community. We do a lot of QMB clients for people living in the community also that need that kind of help because their medications and copays are high. If they've got a rental contract or a mortgage that's in both names, we can pay half. So those are some of the obstacles that we see usually. Now, when someone passes away, we often get the question, what happens to the money in the trust? Mm-hmm. Right. So that is also a conversation that needs to be had. Medicaid has a rule that no money can go to heirs until Medicaid is paid back. So unless the nonprofit is retaining. So some nonprofit, you have to be a nonprofit organization to manage a pool trust, and the nonprofit is allowed to retain money without paying Medicaid back. However, that which we do not retain, like an agent's trust, we retain 10% minimum, and then we pay Medicaid back, and then anything left can go to heirs. So that's something that they need to understand. So, what I tell people in that context is, let's say they're putting $50,000 into the trust. They're working with an attorney, moving into a nursing home, and instead of spending down to $2,000, they decide to use the trust so they have a little bit extra money for, the quality of life things. It's really a way to improve their quality of life, the disabled individuals. Not to save the money for the heirs, because in the long run, we've got to pay Medicaid back. If there's money left for heirs, great, but that's not the sole purpose of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
I seem to come up with a little bit of difference between a qualified income trust and the special needs trust. If a resident of a nursing home, say they wanted to buy, and you said the QIT is used for medical expenses.
Primarily, yes.
Okay. Can it be used for other things like buying a large TV?
No.
Okay. But the pooled trust could be used to buy those types of things.
Yes. Yes. Different rules.
Okay. So, and I think we come across that quite a bit, is where money's being put into the irrevocable QIT, and the money's there, and the resident wants a new TV for the resident's room, and they want to take the money from the QIT because there's a balance there, but they can't get at that money. If they wanted to do the same thing with a pool trust, they could do that.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
Is there a limit to the types of things that can be bought to improve the quality of life?
Well, it's up to the trustee. So we have to use our discretion. Is it for the sole benefit of the individual? Is it something that is really going to help them? Is it an appropriate expense? We had a $70,000 trust for an individual, and she wanted to buy a $50,000 Mercedes. So we told her, no, you're only 60 years old. We need to protect your money. So that it's going to last longer for you. So, there's a lot of decisions, that go into, what's appropriate. We try to look out for our beneficiaries because sometimes, they don't have the the capacity to really understand the concept of money. And so, they're a protector, really. So and we try to make sure that what we're paying to the facilities is the, correct amount. We're there to not question everything, but, to be their protector also and make sure that we, think things are appropriate. If they're doing like credit cards, we want receipts because, we need to make sure it's for sole benefit.
Now, would the pool trust act on behalf of the beneficiary if there was a dispute about payments, like in the nursing home or in the assisted living? Because the trust would be controlling the money.
Mm-hmm. To a certain extent, yes. I mean, we do talk with the facilities, about the bills. If we see something that looks unusual, we'll question it. So, we don't have legal authority over that individual. But yes, we will try to advocate for our clients as much as possible. In fact, with the QMB benefits, there's a rule about in the state about doctors not being allowed to balance bill, and we'll see that sometimes, and we'll actually send the doctors the statutes on the balance billing to let them know, you're not supposed to be doing this, and our clients should not have to pay this.
And I found it interesting when you were talking about the lady with the Mercedes who wanted to buy something, and previously we had talked about the control issue, mm-hmm. about putting the money in the trust and then the resident losing control of how that money's spent. Mm-hmm. What are some of the issues you run across with that? Is that really a big friction point between the pool trust and the individuals in the trust?
It's not usually a big friction point, no. It's really not. I mean, we're there to help the individual, and they usually understand that, or their advocate does. So, usually there's not a lot of friction. We had a gentleman who was spending a lot on internet games. I mean, to the tune of $600-700 a month, and so we had our conversations with him and told him he needed to slow down on that. Not that he needs to completely stop, but, maybe $100 a month would be a more reasonable amount. So usually when they understand that you're trying to look out for their benefit, that in the end, like our lady, in the end, we ended up buying her a $10,000 car. And of course, the first time she was mad because we wouldn't do the Mercedes. Well, she ended up coming in and thanking us later for protecting herself, protecting her funds.
I'm sure she was very glad about that.
So usually in the end, they understand that we're really trying to look out for them.
Okay. Nothing is free, of course.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So what are the costs associated and the fees for establishing and maintaining an individual's special needs trust?
So I can only speak for Aegis fees.
Right.
Again, there's, somewhere around 10 or so pool trust companies in the state of Florida. We actually manage two. We manage one for the Florida Public Guardianship also. And all of the funds in that account at the end go to support public guardianship. However, fees, our minimum fee is $105 a month. And the way our QMB clients can afford that, the people that need help with medications, is their Medicare Part B premium is being paid for them with that benefit. That's $134 that they get back, plus Part D if they're, with the drug coverage and all. So we want to be a win-win with our fees. So our minimum fee is $105 a month. The way our fees are structured, and most pool trust companies have a percentage of the market value. So the way ours are structured, when an account gets over $50,000, and the percentage kicks in. So.
Okay. And every company has their own fee structure. So
right.
What you're talking about is just general what you do. Other companies
Mm-hmm.
may charge a different scale.
Right.
So.
And there is, if they're putting, assets into the trust, or cash is usually what the trusts are funded with. In our trust, if it's more than $2,500, we have a setup fee, anywhere from $250 to $750, depending on how much is going into the trust.
And this would be a question that's near and dear to our hearts, is that we, on multiple occasions, when we are doing our work advocating for residents, we generally have some family members who don't quite agree with what we're doing. Do you come across that same thing with having mom's money go into a trust and the children saying, "What are you doing with my mom's money?"
We do sometimes. That's why we make sure that they're using an attorney if they're putting, any kind of money other than just the income on a monthly basis into the trust. So generally the individual, that we work with either has a durable power of attorney for their parents, their loved ones, and so they're the ones that we would be working with, and they name the advocates in the document. So if there's a family member that is not named as a beneficiary advocate on the joiner agreement, we can't even talk to them about the account. They don't have any authority.
They have no standing.
They have no standing in the account. So of course there's family issues all the time, and that's one reason people do put money into the trust. They want a professional managing the money. They don't, and sometimes it helps to keep friction out of the family because now it's on the trustee.
Right. There's always good and bad in every facet of life and everything that you enter into. What happens when a person is not satisfied with the manner that the trust is being operated in? Is there a way for that person to switch companies, or to withdraw from the trust, or?
That's a good question. So yes, you can switch pooled trust companies. So if you have a pooled trust, let's say it's got $20,000 in it, and you're unhappy with our services, you can go to another pooled trust company, establish an account, and then transfer the assets from one pooled trust company to the new pooled trust company. So yes, that can be done.
And is there a fee or anything like that for?
That's strictly up to, we don't charge like a fee on the end, to like that. I don't know what other pool trust companies do. There probably would be, setup fees, subject with the new trust,
right.
Those types of things. But we don't charge like a termination type fee in that case.
Okay. What would someone do if they didn't want to necessarily switch the trust companies, but for lack of a better word, wanted to file a complaint saying you're doing wrong with my money? What's that process? I know you've never had that before.
We actually haven't had anybody file a complaint. Hopefully, it generally doesn't get to that point. We are all the pool trust companies are nonprofit organizations, so we are not subject to like the SEC or the OCC like a bank is, in a financial company, that kind of thing. So I imagine I really don't know, to file a legal complaint. We've really, they would, if they filed something against us, then we would have to respond to it with our attorney, So it generally would be two attorneys, their attorney and our attorney, kind of working with each other to see if we could resolve the issue. If
Well, you're very fortunate to never have had a complaint.
Well, no, I won't say we've never had a complaint. That would not be fair, because of course, you do business, and so but generally we either try to work it out between ourselves or with their attorney and our attorney. So.
And we've talked about the trust, but I think, what do you think that people should consider when they're looking at going into a trust? Like, I mean, what are they looking at? Okay, I have X amount of money. I expect to be around for this long. I want to leave this much to my children. What are some of the factors that go into the decision to do it?
Okay. Well, a lot of it is extending the life of the money. How long is their money going to last? For our clients that have a lot of high medication expenses, I do an example in some of the training that I do with someone with like $20,000 left, but yet their monthly expenses are higher than what their income is. So they're dipping into their principal every month to pay for their living expenses. They may be spending $300-400 in medications, right? So, the decision is if we could help reduce those costs very often, now my money is going to last longer. So a lot of times it's that kind of thinking of, what kind of benefit am I going to get? Is it worth it to me? Is it going to make my quality of life better? Is it going to make my money last longer? Those types of things. So that's a lot of times the decision. And then if they're they've got the larger amounts of money and they're wanting to medicate, it's all about basically the same thing, quality of life issues. So and termination provisions, if they're putting a larger amount of money into the trust, they often are thinking about, well, what's going to happen when I pass away? Who's going to get the money? Is it going to be Medicaid? Is it going to be an heir? We at Aged actually have the ability to use the money to set up another pooled trust for another disabled individual. So you do have to meet the definition of disability to use a pooled trust. That's one of the rules. Mm-hmm. So if they leave 100% to Aged, the nonprofit, we can then use that money to set up another trust for a disabled individual. They may have somebody in their family or even just a friend, and we can do that. So we have those discussions with them, So that's also one of the considerations when they're opening the trust.
Okay, so if mom was in a nursing home, she set up the pooled trust, and unfortunately mom passed away, but the daughter was also in an assisted living. Mm-hmm. That money, it could be arranged that the money from the mother's pooled trust could go into another trust for the daughter.
So as long as, the initial signing of the document, they told us that with the money that Aged retains, we want you to set up a trust for our disabled daughter. Now we have, paperwork, for them to, to fill out like that. So they would, in that case, typically name Aged to retain 100%, and then we would use that, and we have the letter on file saying, I have a disabled daughter, I want you to set up a trust for her. So we would then go out to the daughter or her legal advocate and establish a trust for her. Works well with spouses too, 85-year-old spouses, those kinds of things. So sometimes the attorneys will structure it that way also for the spouses.
Is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about the Special Needs Trust or the QMB program?
Well, it's just, a lot of people think of Medicaid as the long-term care program, and that's great. And we do a lot of pooled trusts for people that have, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 left going into a nursing home. But just remember that there's also the QMB benefit for people on Medicare. They can help reduce the cost of their meds and copays, so they can afford their medications, and it's just another benefit out there to remember, I would say. Can't really think of anything else that that I need to say, cover.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule
You're
to come
welcome.
speak with us. And I hope today's session was a learning experience for everyone. And we'll see you next month.
Thank you.